Gargoyle Part II. He swung his mace. It lengthened into a huge arc fanning across a horde of burnt beings with fire and lava pouring out of their mouths and eyes, shifting towards us. It flattened all of them. They cracked to dust as a huge gust of wind fanned out for miles, drying them out and separating the dust particles. Gatekeeper, we keep going. I will clear a way. I will help you. No, Marek said. You use your gifts and he will know you are here in his realm. Leave this to me. I watched as more burnt beings rose from the ground, heading towards us, horde upon horde. They are only the realm's defense mechanism, I said. Marek nodded. He swung his mace again, flattening another battalion of them. Stay behind me, and I will make my way to those tall buildings, he said. Fire was thrown at us, but Marek's wings spread ahead of me, shielding me from it. He did not seem to mind it too much as he kept walking. He swung his mace, creating a slipstream that pierced burnt beings like a skewer through bits of chicken. They disintegrated, clearing a path ahead of us. Marek reminded me of Mortimer, who used to protect me in the mist with his effulgence. He too always walked ahead of me, ever vigilant. We made our way down the crater of the volcano, my eyes on the high-rise buildings. They looked familiar for some reason. Marek, yes, Gatekeeper. Have you seen this place before? Never, he said. We moved steadily down the gradient of the volcano. Hiss of steam and cracking ground with fire was heard around us. It was getting hotter. Burnt beings still rose from the ground. However, they were scattered. Marek smashed them down one at a time. It reminded me of an old tabletop game, Whack-A-Mole. We kept walking towards the council estate at the heart of the volcano. Marek crushed two burnt beings with his mace. He swung it, unleashing a slipstream that flattened the remaining burnt beings moving towards us. We walked on until we reached the base of a series of tall blackened buildings that had been half eaten by fire. The estate. Looks familiar, I thought to myself, as I looked down at a broken sign on the ground. Dread coiled in my stomach. I wasn't sure why. I crouched beside the sign. Ash covered some of the letters of a handwritten word. Ow! I rubbed my fingers together between each wipe of the sign to reveal the letters. Now I knew why I was afraid. The words read, Concrete Jungle. Do you know this place, Gatekeeper? Marek said. I stood up. I lived here when I was mortal. I know where Andhaka will be. Gatekeeper, he has created this place to trick you, Marek said. Memories of my youth blasted my mind as I scanned the burning estate. This is his plan, destroy my mind with memories. How can I think straight if my mind is focused on the past? Marek grasped my wrist. It felt like someone had dipped my wrist in concrete, and it had just dried. I can guard your body here, but your mind is beyond my reach, he said. Follow me. I walked across a flat bed of dirt towards a stairwell on the end of block B2. Ash and debris floated around us as a hot slipstream ran its course around the bric-a-brac of buildings. It howled as it propelled up the stairwells on the end of each building, blasting a plume of ash and debris on the top floor as both streams collided. I walked past a concrete bunker to my right, trying not to look at it. You know where I am, Gatekeeper. Come to me. Andhaka's voice wafted in the breeze. I looked at the bunker. I was waiting in a walkway. They were whole. This is a memory, I thought. A guard in a stormtrooper uniform stood at the end of the walkway at the first door. She talked to the flat's occupant with another guard beside her. Rikers, I thought. That's what we called them. The guard took off her helmet. Lieutenant Keeley. I was right. She was beautiful. I was transfixed. Images of my mother's death flooded my mind. This wasn't Andhaka's doing. It actually happened like this. I remember my grandmother lighting a ghee candle in front of a photograph of my mother. The whole flat was covered in white drapes. My mother was dead. Someone is behind the door I stood next to. It was followed by whispers. Footsteps approached the door. An elderly lady's blue eyes peeped through the crack in the door. "Who is it?" she said with a southern Ukrainian accent. "Eric sent me," I said. The woman quickly unlocked the chub lock. We tried to prise the door away from its doorframe, but it was too heavy. She cursed in Ukraine and then lifted, but her effort was futile. I dipped my right-hand fingers in the letterbox and got a firm grip. "Move back," I said. "Quickly, you must come inside. They look for you," old woman whispered. I pushed the door, tilting it, allowing my left hand to get a grip around the edge, then I lifted it clean off the frame, stepped inside and put the door back in its original place, twisting the lock to secure it. The flat was clean, but empty, with the exception of 3 thick aqua blankets that were folded neatly in one pile. The old lady stood with the young girl stuck to her like a piece of bubblegum. The little girl had steel blue eyes. They were framed by chubby cheeks with streaks of dirt across them. She held on to a rag doll that looked like it'd been chewed by a Rottweiler. The old lady beckoned me to join them in the kitchen. "Is Eric okay?" "You his friend. I can tell. He would like a boy like you. I am his mother, and this is his sister Katya." I looked at the little girl who pressed back against her mother's legs, as if she could disappear in them. "I'll get your door fixed," I said. "What you mean?" "You need food, clothes, medicine. You contact Shelley," I said. "I know Shelley, yes. Very nice person. She's your grandmother. Yes, lives upstairs," old lady said. "You tell Shelley and I'll come and see you." I stepped in the corridor when somebody banged the door. "You go in kitchen now," old lady whispered. But I pulled the door open to find a Riker standing there. "What can I do for you, officer?" I said to a burly Riker corporal. And then Keely strode straight into the house and into the kitchen. She sized me up as she walked past me. I gazed at her. Her cerulean eyes met mine. She turned away. "I know you from somewhere," she said. "I don't think so," I said, crunching my toes in my boots to relax. Images of my mum lying cold on the bunker floor hit me. Fire coiled in my stomach. It wasn't blue fire back then. It was just rage. I wanted to dig her with a knife for what she did to my mother. "What you doing here?" Keely said. She inspected the kitchen. I kept my eyes on the knife on the worktop. It had bits of meat on it, but it'll do the job, I thought. "I came to see an old friend, but it's not been back here in a while." "Who?" Keely said, now looking directly at me. I turned my gaze to her. "Who?" she said. A firm impression of an owl. Who? I will give that a 7 out of 10. I said. Burly corporal sniggered. "You like that, huh?" I smiled. Keely took a step closer, looking up at me. Her eyes were cold steel. "I'm going to enjoy stepping on your face," she said. "Go for it," I said. I'd had enough of this dance, and now I wanted to change the tempo. "Watch your mouth, boy." Burly corporal took a step towards me and tilted his chin. "You must be new around here," I said, flicking a switch in my pocket. An earbud my friends and I wore on the estate to communicate our shenanigans kicked in. "Hey, what's up?" Remy said inside my ear. A good friend, now long gone. "You going to get this ape to arrest me, Lieutenant Keely?" I said. "Don't do it, ape," Remy said in my ear. "We're coming, just keep quiet." I heard footsteps and then a door slammed. "Well?" I said. "Officer, he's a good boy. You don't want to arrest him," old woman said to Lieutenant Keely, who ushered old woman and Katya out of the kitchen. She tapped her finger on the trigger of her rifle. I don't know what's got up your ass, but I'll take you in just for being mouthy. Burly Corporal stepped towards me. You had it now. Turn around. I looked at the old woman. It's all right. Take Katya into the lounge, I said. Old woman ushered Katya into the lounge. Kept looking back at me. Turn around, Burly Corporal said. I feigned a turn. I snapped my elbow back into the corporal's nose. Blood splattered everywhere. In 2 sharp hand movements, I had the corporal's gun trained on Lieutenant Keeley, whilst the corporal was still reeling from the blow. You blocker, you broke my blows, Burly Corporal said with blood all over his hands. Stand down, or I'll shoot, Lieutenant Keeley said, as she edged closer to the corporal who was still trying to shake off the wobble in his legs. Thank you, I said, dead calm. Keeley looked nervous as she stepped around the corporal. I shoulder-checked the corporal, who flew face first into Lieutenant Keeley, knocking her clean off her feet. They both ended up against the wall in a heap. You should go now, old lady said. Don't worry, this won't come back on you, I said, grabbing Keeley's arm and dragging her limp body out from underneath the corporal. I slid my arms around her arms and hoisted her up. She shoved a handgun in my throat. You thought I was out, huh? She said, breathing heavily. The blow had clearly winded her. Get up. I got up, pulling her up with me as she held onto my throat with her vice-like grip. We're walking out of here. You're under arrest, she said, gun still denting the skin on my throat. My earbud clicked. Come in, I said. What? Keeley said. Her face turned cold with rage. She saw Remy charge at her with Alien and Scud behind him. He pointed the gun at Remy. I snapped my elbow in her face, exploding her nose. He staggered back, seeing double through her blood. I grabbed my gun and aimed it at her head. Keeley stood dazed. She looked down at the hole in her chest. For my mother, I said. Her forehead whipped back and then recoiled. There was now a hole in her forehead. Her knees buckled. Her face winced in horror, and then it was expressionless. She fell. I watched. It seemed like an eternity before she hit the ground. I dropped the gun. Tears streamed out of my eyes. Keeley. I found myself back at the lip of the volcano. I was curled on the ground. Burnt beings surrounded me, but they kept away from the monolith that was a few feet away. Marek swung his mace at a tall green being with 4 arms, each one wielding a mace. Horns protruded from his crown and a piece of cloth hung around his neck. Gatekeeper, stay strong, Marek shouted as he battled Andhaka. I looked around. He was playing with my mind. Rage coiled inside me. I reached for my cane. Dada. I heard a small boy's voice in the corner of my mind. Dada. It changed. Use the chakra. It resonated in every fiber of my being. It felt like the universe speaking directly to me. I focused, calling the Sudarshan chakra. I closed my eyes and then opened them, all 3 of them. Andhaka smashed Marek, knocking the gargoyle to the ground. He looked at me and grimaced. A bright light appeared above us, forging into a spinning disc. I pulled it towards me. Cut, it unleashed sunlight in the form of shards, missiles and projectiles, ripping through all things around it. Andhaka grabbed Merrick and used him as a shield. Slam. A shard hit Merrick's center mass. Crack. The gargoyle blasted into 1,000 pieces. I watched as the chakra disintegrated all the burnt beings around me. Andhaka kept close to the monolith, ducking around it, dodging the projectiles. A shard came at me. Dada, stop it now. Take it. Andhaka is not defeated yet, I said. Dada, take it, Bob said to me. His voice part my baby boy, part universe. Stop. I stopped it as it almost touched my torso. I plucked a shard and fused it in my cane. The ruins on the cane glowed blue fire that now burned a radiant amber. Foolish young one, Andhaka said. He strode to me. the only weapon you had against me, and you stopped it, just as I expected you to," he said. He grabbed me by the throat and lifted me clean off the ground. I closed my eyes, struggling for breath. "I'm going to take your house, and then I'm going to the Mighty One's temple, and nothing you or your comrades have can stop me now. I will take what's mine, what's owed to me." I opened my two eyes. "Why do they call you the Blind One?" I said. Andhaka glared at me as I looked down at the cloth around his neck. "Surely that should be over your eyes." Oh. I doubled over as his fist recoiled from my torso. "Open the monolith and take me to the first step of the temple," he said. "You are the Blind One. You could not see your mother in the woman you coveted, just as you cannot see that I will never open the doorway for you." Andhaka buried my head into the ground. "Why do you stand against me, gatekeeper? Join me, and I will send you to your wife and child," Andhaka said. He crouched down beside me. My head was still spinning. I gazed at him from within as I got up. My hand reached for the cane, gripping it. I could see his form. He was truly born of the Mighty One, and I could not defeat him without the Sudarshan Chakra. I loosened my grip on the cane. "You have not been beyond the first few steps of the temple. Help me, and I will take you with me. Be with your family. Go. I will not stop you. All you need to do is open the door," Andhaka said. Images of Keely and Bob flooded my mind. Tears leaked from my eyes. How I longed to be with them, I thought. Bob's way was taking way too long. "Yes," Andhaka said. "Very well. I will join you, but as you said, you send me to my family. I do not wish to remain at the house." Andhaka smiled. His sharp teeth matched the color of his horns. He lifted me up by the neck and strode to the monolith. "I will release you once we are on the steps of the temple." He held me up against the monolith. I focused my will and touched the palm of my hand on the monolith. It became translucent instantly. "Let's go," I said, grabbing Andhaka's horn. I jumped, pulling him towards the translucent barrier as a high-pitched shriek cut through it towards us. "Foolish boy," Andhaka said. "You think me a fool?" He snapped my hand off his horn and held me up. "Very well, I will take the long way to the temple, destroying your friends and loved ones along the way. You will not see what I do to Divine Mother," he said. I slammed my cane in his eye. He screamed. He thrust his palm through my chest, propelling me through the threshold. Silence. I fell into the abyss once more. End of Gargoyle Part II. See you next Sunday at 11. Don't die in your sleep. Godspeed.